Welcome back to episode 10, the finale of season 1. We'll finish our trip to Troon, haul the boat out for the winter, and give a little wrap-up of things that we've learned. We're now in Scotland, making our way to Troon Yacht Haven, the 7th waypoint on this map. We're entering the Crinan Canal, marked as number 5 here. We met our buddy boat for the journey, the Autumn of Arun, a classic local beauty with a very nice couple aboard. We'll be transiting with them for the next several hours. As I mentioned in our last video, the local authorities need to manage their available freshwater resources, so don't fill the canal more than needed. Boats such as ours, with a draft of over 2 meters, need to call ahead, and they were happy to accommodate us. The canal is 9 miles long and provides a much shorter route from the Inner Hebrides into the Clyde, versus sailing around the peninsula. The canal opened in 1801. Even Queen Victoria transited the canal back in 1847 during a holiday in the Scottish Highlands. These locks are a tight fit, but still okay for a 42-foot sailboat. The sea locks at either end are electrically powered, but the ones internal are manually operated, and we'll show you that. One of the old salts, a frequent lock spectator and former sailor, gave us some hints on using our winches to manage the lines as the boats rose and later fell in the locks, and his tips were quite handy. We've traversed the Erie Canal in New York and the St. Lawrence Seaway, but we learned something new about managing locking here in the Crinan. Thank you.
Hope there's nobody around the corner coming this way.
The passage is quite narrow, appearing similar to the creek back home at Southport Sailing Club,
on the left
but
side.
so far so good, as long as no one's coming the other way.
0.4.
We scrubbed the bottom a couple of times in the first half mile,
0.5
rolling
meters.
over submerged logs we suspected,
Under the
as
keel.
opposed to pushing through mud. We had been assured, however, that only the first stretch was like this, as the locked doors here leaked, but further legs would be deeper and smoother with better sealing doors.
Yep.
After hitting the bottom, we were very keenly watching our depth gauge. 0.4 or 0.5 meters under the keel is good. 0.1 is not. And at 0.0 meters, that's bad. We'll hit the bottom.
Got half a meter of water here, that's good.
And then we got stuck. Stuck fast. After breaking free from a couple of minor slowdowns, we are now truly stuck.
Which means
And since we're inland, we can't even call on the VHF radio. Laws don't allow use of VHF radios, marine radios, on shore. And technically, we're inland. So we have to reach the lockmaster on the phone. They are very apologetic. They confirm and check with us about our 2.2 meter draft and can't understand our predicament, as another 2.2 meter draft boat had passed through earlier today. The canal manager and the water level supervisor both arrived to where we were stuck and promised to help. They began raising the level of water in the canal, and after about 90 minutes, we were finally floating again. During that 90 minutes, we were stuck high up above a huge peat bog with a floating road actually going across it. They've been able to recover some magnificent ancient artifacts from this bog, a story for another day. So once we were free, we proceeded to the remaining locks, the manual locks. Our buddy boat had hired a guide or a pilot to help them in advance. We tried to do so, but unfortunately weren't able to find one available, so we chipped in on the fee for this gentleman. He did most of the heavy lifting, but we gave him a hand a few times for the experience. And here I am helping, putting my best foot forward, or backward to be exact. Along the canal are very nice cottages, a few hotels and pubs, and pastoral lands. It's very calming and serene. And here's a few nice shots of our buddy boat, the Autumn of Arun. You may notice the gentleman behind their mast grinding on a winch, opening the sluices to level the water inside the lock so that it matches the level outside the lock. And here we are locking down on the outboard side. You can see the leaky doors. Due to our being stuck for about 90 minutes, we weren't able to clear the canal the day that we entered it and had to spend the night. Actually, spending a night on still, fresh water was very nice, if not really in the plan. We had to call ahead and change our arrival dates at our next ports, but it wasn't an issue. This was a difficult process for Marie, locking, with her injuries. but thankfully was the last of the significant manual tasks for this season. She's a trooper. As we exited the canal the next day, we were met by the canal staff, who promised to pay for any repairs if they were needed after our grounding. This was very nice. I'd gotten rather short with them the prior day for not accommodating our draft, but felt better after this promise. And then we're back in the salt water again, in the Clyde, on our way to our next port, Port of Adi. It was a great day, but it'll be our second last stop this year, so we're a little bit excited.
I just saw a fin.
We saw a few more dolphins along this route, but they were too busy to play today. Port of Adi is a bit of a high-end marina complex next to a historic village. As high-end, there's the expected restaurant, hotel, and even a spa. Once more, we enjoyed showers with plenty of hot water. Luxurious. The next morning, we set sail for Troon. The Firth of Clyde is huge.
At 3 miles out, we're approaching Northern Breeze's resting place for the winter. I just saw a whale.
The whales come right into the Firth. I suspect they don't go all the way up the Clyde to Glasgow, but they certainly came part of the way. And this is Troon Yacht Haven, a well-protected marina inside of a commercial harbor. We saw boats of all size, shape, and manufacture here, even the Hinkley, but so far we've not seen any other Baltics. Perhaps we will next year as we get closer to our home port in Finland. And Troon is the end of our sailing this year. We've made it. The mental stress is relieved, and now we just have some work to do to put her to bed for the winter and get me back to Windsor in time for my next class. This is a full-service professional marina. They haul us out while we observe. They use a Boston whaler and a very cool boat lift. Typically, we've had to disconnect one of our stays, or either a forestay or backstay, to fit into a boat lift. It's a difficult task. But this lift is configured without the overhead brace, so that task is not required here. Very nice. This lift is also unique for us as we see that it can be expanded wider to lift catamarans. And the final new bit for us is the fact that the gentleman is driving our boat around with a remote control. He very skillfully places it into a cradle for us, but has a little surprise for us just before he does that. He stops to measure our draft. We had told him that we draft 2.2 meters, and he needs to provide a cradle that'll support that. But he questions that, because by eye, he thinks it is larger. He needs the cradle to match the actual draft. His tape measure tells the tale. We have a 2.6 meter draft. WTF, what the frig? The literature doesn't say this. As this boat was raced in Italy when it was new, it either had a special order keel from the factory, or it has been modified. I begin to feel rather sheepish about getting short with the folks in the Crinan Canal, implying that they didn't know their own canal's depth. I now know that they very likely had the 2.2 meters that I requested, plus 0.1 meters for the fresh water density loss. But our boat is actually 2.6 meters, or 8 feet 6 inches in draft. So Marie simply says, "Well, cut it off." Me and the two marina guys look at her with frozen expressions. No guy wants a shorter keel. It helps us to sail to the wind. It helps us to sail faster. And I promise Marie that now that we know the true draft, we'll be careful and not get stuck again. she isn't convinced. I guess that'll be a problem for another day. We're glad to have the boat securely ashore for the winter. We empty most of our possessions into a storage locker, clean the summer's mold, install a dehumidifier and a few small tube heaters for the winter, and we spend a couple of nights in the hotels while we do so. We've got a long list of fall maintenance items, and for the most part, we checked all the boxes. And then the journey home begins. The train from Troon to Glasgow Central Station, and then another train to London. As we boarded the train, the newspapers and radio reporting that the royal family was on their way up here to Scotland, to Balmoral, as the Queen was ailing. By the time we arrived in London that evening, the Queen had passed. We normally enjoy a vibrant London, but the next few days were very subdued. We stopped at the British Museum the next day in London, one of the very few places that was actually open during the mourning period. And we signed the Book of Condolences. Regardless of your opinions of the monarchy, she was a great lady. We visited St. Catherine's Marina by Tower Bridge to check it out. Perhaps we'll go into there next year as a mooring. The Royal Barge was at the marina while we were there. We also walked the mall in front of the palace and visited Buckingham Palace, where barricades were being set up for the upcoming events. Tents were already up and occupied by the world's media. It was all very quiet and solemn. Last evening we caught a show in the West End, Agatha Christie's Mousetrap, and finally headed home out of Gatwick Airport. So, to wrap it all up, we made a few slides that we used to talk at our home club, Southport, and we'll share them here. We've made it from Canada to Scotland via Greenland, Iceland, and the Faroes. Just the two of us. A little worse for wear, but we made it. And we have lessons learned and endless gratitude. First, what it takes to be ready to go. The prior year, leaving from Lake St. Clair in 2021, we had added significant safety upgrades in electronics and life raft recertification. We also repaired, replaced, or inspected many of the boat's physical systems. We even put on a new teak deck. And importantly, we studied and took courses so we were mentally prepared to leave the Great Lakes. And then in 2022, to leave Canada, further upgrades to safety equipment, life jackets, electronics, emergency beacons, and first aid supplies. We added shore support with sailing plans to family and friends, hourly tracking ability via satellite for them, a weather router, and buddy boats so that we could convoy as we traveled. We filled our tanks with water and fuel, our freezer and pantry, our batteries, and refreshed our first aid supplies with added items as well. We experienced some hurdles, such as the previously mentioned GPS limitations, the fuel electronics limitations, but we overcame them. But those hurdles were rewarded with magnificent experiences and lifelong memories. The Brees did her job well. We learned how to sail oceans. Redundancy certainly came in handy. Icebergs are scary in the fog, beautiful in the sunshine. Communications to shore are very stress-relieving for us and our family and friends. And we met amazing people from many countries, and we learned much from them, and I hope to see them all again soon, in various ports. And the animals, birds, seals, whales, dolphins, joy. Pure joy to see them in their world. And we learned so much more. So thanks for watching. We've been delayed this year due to family reasons, but we finally have a plan, and we'll be off the dock very soon. We'll provide a real-time update very shortly. See you then.